Hello, everyone. So, first of all, good evening. For those who are joining us with us today, if you are here with me, appreciate if you can help me to click the like buttons for me. Help me to share this out. Again, before we start, just a quick disclaimer over here. This section, we are not providing any buy and sell call. So, if you want to trade any stock based on discussions in this evening over here, make sure you go on trading plan. If not, get advice from the professional. Now, again, this section, we got Dato Yu back into this section to share with us more into crude oil, especially in this topic here. If you are joining us last 2 weeks ago, I think Dato do cover a few counters, okay, of crude oil. And unfortunately for this week, seems like crude oil prices are getting slightly lower. So this section here, we're going to focus particularly in Petronas stocks, whether is there any opportunity following on this crude oil crash. Okay, so without further ado, currently it's already 8:30. I will pass the floor to Dato to start our section in this evening. Dato, pass it to you.
Hi, good evening. Let me start by giving you an overview of the global oil and gas sector.
Sorry, Dato. Sorry to interrupt. Probably you can put full screen on your slides, so
Isn't
we
it
can
full
see
screen?
better.
Can
Yeah,
you see?
currently it's not full screen. Your side is not full screen.
How do I get it full screen now?
Yes,
Do I get
correct.
it full? Okay. So the global oil and gas sector is normally classified into four.
Sorry, Dato. It's still not full screen yet. It's still not full screen. Yeah.
How do I get full screen?
Yeah, I think you try to click here again.
Get full screen?
No.
Right. Okay. Full screen?
No, still the same. Okay, never mind. It's okay. Probably I think Dato can proceed first. If
Okay.
let's say there's any of our audience here, actually, if you have difficulty to go through the slides, don't worry. I think Dato will share us the slides later on. Okay, probably Dato, yeah, you can start.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, what I was saying was that when you look at the global oil and gas sector, they're actually normally divided into four: the upstream, the midstream, the downstream, and what I call the services and equipment sector. So when you look at the Petronas group of companies, they're actually, the first one is actually MISC, okay, which I will consider as somewhere in between the midstream and upstream, because while it is a shipping company, it has some exploration activities. Then, of course, we have Petronas Gas, which is basically mainly a midstream player. And then, of course, Petronas Dagangan, that's the one running the petrol stations, but they also have some midstream operation, refinery operation as well. And then, of course, we have Petronas Chemicals, which is basically refining the crude oil into chemical products. Now, Petronas doesn't really have any company in the services and equipment sector. And to be fair, Petronas actually has another company which is not into oil and gas. Okay, it's basically the KLCC Twin Tower. It's actually a property company now. But what I'd like to focus today is these four Petronas, so-called Petronas oil and gas companies. Now, when you look at them, Petronas actually has more than 51% share in all of them. These are the four companies listed on Bursa Malaysia. And the one with the lowest shareholding, MISC, Petronas still holds 51%. So it is actually majority controlled by Petronas. And one of the strange things about these four Petronas companies is that although they are in what I call the oil and gas sector, when you look at the Bursa classification, none of them are classified under the Bursa energy sector. You know, the Bursa energy sector are the companies generally like, Petron or Sapura Energy. Okay, most of the oil and gas companies are classified under the energy sector. Whereas when you look at these Petronas companies, the four of them, they actually don't come under the energy sector. Okay, so they come under different sectors than energy. Okay, so chemicals is under industrial products. The petrol station comes under consumer products. MISC comes under logistics, and the Petronas gas comes under utilities. So when you try to make what I call peer comparison, you have to be very careful, okay? Because looking at their particular sector may not capture the full oil and gas impact. Now, when I talk about these four companies, I'm going to refer you to the fundamental mapper. And this is the app that we have where we basically classify companies based on the business performance. So the horizontal axis denote the business performance. To the right is the best business fundamentals. To the left, the worst. And then the top is the highest investment risk.
Sorry, Dato, to interrupt. Actually,
Yep.
I didn't see your slides moving. I see we are still seeing your the first
Okay.
outwards.
So my slides, how do I get it?
Okay, yeah. Okay now. Yeah.
Do you see them moving already, or?
Yes, the slide is working now.
Yeah. Okay. So the fundamental mapper gives you a picture of the companies where we divide it into four quadrants based on what I call the risk matrix and the business risk. Now, when you look at the four Petronas companies, okay, each of them falls into the different quadrant. So, for example, MIC falls into what I call the high risk, poor business fundamental segment. The Petronas Chemicals sits in between the gem quadrant and the turnaround quadrant. Petronas Gas falls into the one where the business fundamentals are good, but there's high investment risk. And only Petronas Dagangan actually falls into what I call strong fundamentals, lower investment risk. So the four companies, by coincidence, actually fall in the four different segments. Now, when you look at the four companies, although they are all owned by Petronas, they are different sizes. So in terms of total assets, for example, you find out that Petronas Chemicals and MIC are far much bigger than the Petronas Gas or even the Petronas Dagangan. Okay? Whereas in terms of revenue, you have a slightly different picture. Now, what I want to do is give you a bit background on each of the company. Now, Petronas Dagangan is the one that runs the petrol stations. And when you look at the business they are in, they're basically distributing what I call with petroleum products. Okay, and they have divided the products into two main categories. You have the retail, which is basically, the serving the car industry, the automobile industry, and the commercial is the aviation fuel. The bulk of it is actually aviation fuel. And then you got some convenience ones, which are basically LPG related ones, which are very small in the Malaysian context. The bulk of their business comes from Malaysia, in fact, exclusively from Malaysia. And the challenge with this sector is the threat of disruption from the EV. Okay, it is not just Petronas, because a lot of the petrol stations around the world are also going to have these problems, because as the EV comes into a bigger way, I think the current petrol station model, they got to figure out what to do with that. Okay, but until that happens, okay, we have not seen a transition away from that particular model. But that's the biggest risk when you're actually looking at the petrol station business. Okay, they are sitting on assets that hopefully, they last for a few more years. But if the EV really comes big way very quickly, they could be sitting on land that actually nobody's want to go and fill up petrol. So that's the biggest challenge with investing in Petronas dagangan at this point in time. I think the aviation fuel side is still okay, but it's what I call the fuel retail model that's the one that is a big question mark hanging over the air. Now, Petronas Chemicals is basically refining the crude oil into what I call downstream products. So fertilizers, olefins, and recently, over the past decade, Petronas Chemicals has actually gone diversified, so that it's today a much more diversified company in terms of the chemical components. Okay? But this is still what I call an export-oriented business, because when you look at the business profile, Malaysia is probably less than around 30 to 40% of the overall business. It is a global business. They have operations in Indonesia and overseas as well. So although it is owned by Petronas, quite a lot of the business actually don't come from Malaysia. The third company is Petronas Gas, okay? And this is basically the company that refines the gas, distributes the gas, okay, and actually also imports in LNG and then convert it into gas. And they also own, I think, a power plant making use of the gas. Now, again, Petronas Gas is a purely Malaysian operations. The bulk of, in fact, all of its operations and business come from Malaysia. And then, of course, we have MISC. Okay, and MISC has, over the past decade, transitioned itself from what I call a shipping company into a more of a maritime, a fuel-related business. So today, for example, it has gone upstream, okay, into the exploration and production business with their what I call the FPSO, okay, the production and storage offshore vessels, okay. And when you look at the business profile, okay, you can find out that about half of the business comes from Malaysia. A big portion comes from transporting oil and gas materials for other countries. So when you look at the four companies, the picture that you have is that they are all in different business sector of the oil and gas. But although they are in what I call different business profile, they are all affected by crude oil prices. And this is the chart that I showed 2 weeks ago to show that crude oil prices are volatile. This is the past 40, 50 years picture. And you can see that...
Sorry, your slide is not moving again. It's still on the fundamental mapper.
I suspect it's either my connection.
Oh, okay. Maybe you want to try to reopen again your slides.
Can you see it?
Okay, now I can see the four fundamental mapper. The MISC.
Do you see them moving? You don't see it moving?
No, I don't see it moving.
Let me try to... Oh, how do I do it? I stop sharing and then redo it.
Yes.
Let me try again. Okay. I don't see my slides. There's a trouble. I don't see my slides on my screen. Why?
Oh, okay. Or maybe you can try to share entire screen. So when you put up your slides on your screen, you're able to capture it.
No, I don't see entire screen. window. Do I see it? Do you see it?
Okay. Okay, your site is back. I'm not sure whether it's moving or not. Currently, we are looking at the back gas.
Okay, next one, MIC.
No, it's not moving.
It's not moving.
Yeah, but when you scroll, is moving just now. When you scroll the slides. Okay. Now we can see the back gas.
So when I go into full screen mode, you don't see anything. This is, you can see
Okay, then
scrolling.
now MISC. Now we can see. Now it's a crude oil prices, the chart. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so the crude oil prices are cyclical. Okay, and what I said 2 weeks ago still applies, that when you're looking at cyclical companies, the key is actually to look at the performance over the cycle. Okay, because if you look at what is the current price one, you get a misleading picture. So what I like to do is take you through how the 4 companies' prices and how companies' fundamentals have changed over the past 10 years. Can you see the revenue? Yeah. Okay. So you can see that in terms of the revenue, okay, they all have revenue growth from 2015 to 2024. Okay. But when you look at the profits, okay, you can find out that except for Petronas Dagangan, okay, all the other trees, their profits today, last year in 2024, were lower than that in 2015. Okay? So it is not exactly a fantastic performance. And then when you look at what I call the returns, okay, MIC has a very low return. Okay, the average is below 5%. I mean, it's, if you consider the bank interest rate and so on, a 5% interest rate, return on equity for a public listed company is actually a very poor performance. Okay? And then the other thing is that when you look at Petronas Dagangan and Petronas Chemical returns, they are very volatile. Okay? So you have the only one that seems to be stable is the Petronas Gas. And then when you look at what I call the financial performance, the only positive thing is that they seem to have relatively low debt equity ratio, okay? Which means that I think Petronas has been quite conservative in terms of leverage for their companies. Now, 2 weeks ago, when we were talking about the exploration and production companies, I mentioned that because of the debt structure, because a lot of those companies had a very high debt level, okay, they suffered during the downturn because of impairments. The debt cost them problems in terms of getting financing to support their business, and 1 or 2 of them actually had to go to restructuring. Now, in the case of these 4 companies, because you got Petronas, okay, which is basically a government-owned corporation behind there, you don't have this financial risk for these 4 companies here. Okay, and I think the low debt equity ratio actually supports this picture. Now, the key thing is that when you look at how the performance correlates with the crude oil prices, okay. Now, in this picture, the black line, if you can see the black line, that is the Brent crude oil prices. You can find out that from a overview, okay, looking at the pictures, you can see that their revenue actually have a very close correlation with the crude oil prices. And then when you look actual numbers itself, okay, you find out that they are more than 70%. Over the past 10 years, the correlation has been quite good. Okay? That means if oil price goes up, you would expect the business performance to improve. Of course, if the oil price drops, then you can expect their business performance to drop as well. Now, I won't talk about the business performance, but oil price from January to April, if I'm not mistaken, has dropped by 20%. Okay, this is a stock price movement. Okay, and you find out that, okay, I think either the market is anticipating, leaving aside Petronas Dagangan, the stock market seems to be anticipating that the other companies, their business fundamentals are also going to be affected if the oil price continues to go down now. Okay, but again, you can see now, Petronas Dagangan is a special by itself. Okay, it's not. Now, when you look at the correlation, I want to ask you to be careful because what I've shown you is the correlation from over the past 10 years. When you look at it over a longer period, okay, the correlation is actually much lower. And what this means is that the business have changed, over the past 15 years. So that when you look back over history, a longer period of history, a lot of the historical things that, especially the pre-2015 one, may not apply anymore. So you should look more towards the recent picture, okay, because of the changing business profile. Now, I won't go into details of the comparison and so on, but what I'd like to show to you is the relative position of these four companies in terms of the top line growth, the returns, and the financial position. Because I think these three metrics gives you a very good picture of where they stand. Of course, the bottom was MSC, okay? There was the worst performer, ranked the worst in terms of revenue growth, in terms of returns, and in terms of financials. Now, in terms of returns and financials, the Petronas Dagangan scored the best for returns and financials. Petronas Chemicals had the best growth, and it's number 2 in terms of financials. So this gives you a picture of what I call the business fundamentals. I'll come back to this picture again later on, but what I want to talk to next is the fundamentals is only one picture. The other picture, of course, is the valuation. Okay, and when I talk about valuation, what impacts the valuation, of course, is the cash flow, your discount rate, and what represents the value of the cycle. Now, as I mentioned over the last 2 weeks ago, because of the cyclical performance, you should not look at the current, okay? And you should look at the performance over the past 10 years to give you a picture of what is the average performance for the past 10 years. The alternative way is to say, hey, the 2023 picture seems to be about the cyclical average. So if I can look at this 22 and 23 performance, I can get a proxy of what the cyclical performance would be. And what I'd like to do is share with you these two pictures. So the first picture is how the business looks like, okay? Sorry, how the valuation looks like based on the past 10 years performance. The price is the price, I think, last Thursday, the current price last day. The earnings per share is the past 10 years average earnings per share. And the PE, of course, is the price over the past 10 years earnings. And when you look at this picture, okay, you can find out that, hey, Petronas Chemicals looks cheap from a long-term perspective. Okay? The ones which seems a bit more expensive, Petronas Dagangan and MIC. And then the point I was making is that the trouble with the 10 years picture is that some of the companies, the business profile have changed over the last decade. So what happens in 2012, 2013, or even 2015 may not be the same as what is in 2022 or 2023. So when you look at the past 2 years' performance, okay, and this is just looking at the PE for the past 2 years, you find a slightly different picture, okay, where Petronas Chemical is still cheap. Let me show you. It's still cheap, okay, but the PE has gone up a bit. The Dagangan and MSC are still expensive stocks. I showed you the 10-year picture. Okay. And the Petronas Gas doesn't seem to have much changes, okay, which is not surprising because the gas business have not changed very much over the past decade. So when you look at this, okay, overlay the business fundamentals on top of here. So if you remember, MIC had the worst performance in terms of revenue growth, returns, and financials. The ones with the best returns and financial was dagangan. Okay, the ones with the best, I guess, the best revenue growth. Okay, okay. If I can think about again, the ones with the best revenue growth, okay, was chemicals, and number two in financials. So what you must do is you must overlay, because the trouble with a lot of people is that they look purely on the PE without overlaying the fundamentals. And I'm a strong believer that the business fundamentals, if you're going to look at relative valuation, you should also look at the relative fundamentals, because that will then give you a picture, a stronger picture. Now, what we have done in the fundamental mapper, of course, is to help you in this way by give you a relative picture of where they stand. So the Petronas dagangan, for example, is a stronger fundamentals, okay, and better investment risk compared to Petronas gas, okay, where it is less strong in terms of fundamentals and high investment risk. Okay. So to sum it up, okay, and I think what Zach said is true. This is not a recommendation on which stocks to buy and so on. But if you are looking at the four Petronas group of companies, then I would say that from a layman perspective, you should focus on Petronas dagangan or Petronas gas, and Petronas chemicals, because these two have what I call low investment risk. Okay? The challenge today, of course, is that we don't know, because this picture is based on the past 5 to 6 years business performance. Okay, it has not taken in account the changing oil and gas situation. So if the next 5 years oil price is going to be low at $60, for example, okay, then the picture is all going to be fundamentally different. But if you believe that the current crude oil price is a temporary decline, and then in 6 months' time, when Trump finishes his negotiation with all the countries, and we're all back to square one, okay, and the economy picks up, we will then see oil price picking up, and then we will then go back to what I call this picture, okay, because when you look at the past 10 years, there are 2 or 3 peaks, and each cycle is about 1 or 2 years, so it's not like, a drag on 5 or 10 years low price and 5 or 10 high price. Okay? So if we get the historical picture, okay, then I think the fundamental mapper will then give you a very good picture of where they are. Okay, so that's basically my take on the oil and gas companies from Petronas perspective. Let me just close off by saying that the feedback from people who works in the oil and gas sector is that Petronas is one of the better global national oil companies. I think is the word I would put it. Yeah. Okay. It has a very successful track record. It has a very good track record in generating shareholders' returns. Okay. And whatever else you may think about the government-owned companies and so on, I think over the past 20 years and so on, Petronas have shown itself to be run, I would say, in a reasonably professional manner. Okay, so if you are going to bet on only oil and gas companies and you don't really have any inclination of which is the better ones and so on, look at the Petronas group of companies, because I think the track record is there, and they are, like I said, financially sound. Okay, and while they may not be, a family or entrepreneur-driven businesses and so on, the team of professionals there have been with the companies a long time, and they have a very good track record. So that's basically my take on Petronas. Any questions from anybody?
Okay, thank you, Dato. So, thank you, Dato, for the presentation. Okay, so for our audience in our live Facebook, or maybe you're watching from YouTube, do let me know. Okay, any other questions? Any question that you have for Dato regarding the 4 Petronas related company, or maybe other companies? Okay, regarding crude oils. So probably Dato can help us to answer the questions in this section here.
Okay, so
Okay.
final word. I think the oil and gas sector is okay. I wouldn't say if you believe in there's a thing going around to say that we are now entering the super commodity cycle. I think that's what they use. Okay, and for better or for worse, the oil and gas is part of the commodity. And the theory behind this super commodity cycle is that over the next couple of years, commodity prices are going to benefit, okay, from the uptrend in the cycle. So if you believe in this super commodity cycle one, then your focus is then let's go and look at commodity companies, companies like steel, the oil and gas companies, because this will then benefit from the upturn in the global economy. Okay, so that's basically the background on why I'm looking at commodity companies at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Dato. So probably, Dato, for the next upcoming sections, you want to cover more regarding commodity-related companies?
Well, I think the one that I would like to cover is steel, because I think the steel and aluminum ones are going through the
Okay.
upheaval because of Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, I think currently those are some of the steel companies are relatively low right now. Especially, I don't know, P metal seems like it's a pretty attractive price currently.
Yeah, we'll look at the steel companies. I think in
Okay,
the
sure,
next.
sure, sure. Probably for the upcoming sections, we hope that Dato will share with us more. Okay, another commodities like for example, steel company. So with this, once again for those that who are joining us in this evening over here, we definitely will arrange another sections 2 weeks from now together with Dato you to cover more Bursa related stocks or maybe updates. Okay, for everyone here. So thank you everyone, and thank you Dato for joining us. We'll see you in the next upcoming section. Thank you.
Okay.